I rejected them all. I thought I was choosing my future. I believed perfection was my right. At 25, life chose for me instead. My name is Mr. Jensen, and before the accident, I lived as if the world were a showroom and I was entitled to pick the finest display. I was healthy, athletic, confident, some would say charismatic. My family introduced me to remarkable women over the years, compassionate, intelligent, grounded. Yet I filtered them through a shallow checklist shaped by ego. I wanted someone who would elevate my image. Someone who looked flawless beside me in photographs. Someone who made other men envious. I confused admiration with love. Each time I said no, I felt powerful, as if I were protecting a future masterpiece of a life. I have standards, I would tell my friends. In truth, I had insecurity dressed as pride. I feared that choosing someone ordinary would make me ordinary. By 25, I had rejected enough kindness to fill a lifetime. Still, I felt untouchable. I had a promising career in real estate, a strong body I sculpted at the gym, and a social circle that reinforced my belief that life rewards the bold. Then one rainy night on a highway slick with overconfidence, everything shifted. A truck lost control. Headlights blurred. Metal screamed. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctor's calm voice carried a sentence that divided my life into before and after. Spinal cord injury. Permanent paralysis from the waist down. The silence that followed was louder than the crash. My legs, once symbols of strength and freedom, were still. I remember staring at the ceiling, bargaining with God, replaying every choice as if regret could reverse impact. Rehabilitation was grueling, not just physically, but emotionally. I had to relearn how to sit, how to balance, how to accept help. The mirror reflected someone I did not recognize. For the first time, I felt evaluated not for my ambition or charm, but for what I lacked. Months later, when my family gently suggested I start meeting people again, reality struck harder than the accident. Polite declines. Awkward pauses. Some women were honest. They were not prepared for the responsibility. Others simply disappeared. Even those I once would have dismissed rejected me. And in those quiet rejections, I met the truth. I had once reduced human beings to appearances. Now, I was being reduced to a wheelchair. The symmetry was painful. I realized that karma is not cruelty, it is clarity. It shows you your reflection without filters. And I could no longer look away. Rehabilitation rebuilt my muscles, but it dismantled my ego. Each morning I wheeled myself into therapy carrying more than physical weight. I carried shame. I remembered the women I had dismissed for being too simple or not striking enough. I remembered the polite smiles I offered while internally ranking them. Now, I was the one being measured, assessed in seconds, categorized as complicated, as limited, as less. The irony was merciless. But somewhere between parallel bars and counseling sessions, something unexpected began to grow inside me, not bitterness, but awareness. I started volunteering at the very rehabilitation center where I trained. At first, it was just to fill time, but listening to other patients shifted me. There was a former firefighter learning to live without a leg, a young mother adjusting to life after a stroke, a college athlete navigating blindness. None of them spoke about lost beauty. They spoke about lost identity and the fight to rebuild it. For the first time, I saw resilience without vanity. Their courage was not loud. It was steady. It humbled me. I also began therapy, something I once considered unnecessary. My counselor asked a question that unsettled me. Who were you before the accident? Beyond your body? I struggled to answer. My achievements felt surface level. My confidence, I realized, had depended heavily on external validation. When that validation disappeared, so did my certainty. I had mistaken privilege for merit. The accident had stripped me down to character, and I wasn't sure I liked what remained. One afternoon, I found the courage to reach out to a woman I had rejected years earlier. Her name was Emily. She had been kind, thoughtful, and quietly strong. I had dismissed her because she didn't match the glamorous image I envisioned. When she answered my message, I apologized not to reopen doors, but to acknowledge my arrogance. She responded with grace. I hope you found depth, she wrote. That sentence lingered. Depth. It was something I had once avoided, preferring surfaces that sparkled. As months passed, I stopped chasing approval. I focused on building a meaningful career in accessibility consulting. helping businesses design inclusive spaces. I began speaking at local events about resilience not as a victim, but as someone who had been corrected by life. Slowly, my world expanded again. Not everyone rejected me. Some conversations lasted longer. Some people saw past the chair. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I wasn't curating an image. I was simply present. The most surprising change was internal. I no longer viewed relationships as trophies. I began to understand partnership as mutual strength, not aesthetic symmetry. Karma had not destroyed me. It had refined me. It forced me to confront the shallowness I once celebrated. And while I could not change my past choices, I could choose who I would become moving forward. The final shift in me did not happen dramatically. There was no single triumphant moment, no cinematic breakthrough. It unfolded quietly, in ordinary conversations and small acts of courage. I met Claire at a community fundraiser focused on disability inclusion. She didn't approach me with pity, nor did she treat me like an inspiration. She asked thoughtful questions about my consulting work, challenged some of my ideas, and laughed easily without forcing sympathy into her tone. When I made a self-deprecating joke about my wheelchair, she looked at me calmly and said, "That's equipment, not identity." No one had ever separated my worth from my body so clearly. Spending time with her felt different from anything in my past. There was no performance, no silent evaluation, no checklist. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't trying to secure someone who enhanced my image. I was trying to understand someone's heart. Claire had her own scars, emotional ones from a difficult past relationship, but she carried them with honesty, rather than bitterness. We spoke openly about fear, about vulnerability, about the uncertainty of building a future that doesn't look like the one you once imagined. As our connection deepened, I realized something humbling. The accident had not reduced my chances at love. It had refined the kind of love I could recognize. The people who walked away after my injury were not cruel, they were simply not aligned with the life I now lived. And the man I had been at 25 would not have been capable of sustaining the relationship I was building now. I once believed karma was punishment. Now I see it as correction. It doesn't seek to harm you. It seeks to reveal you. It places you face to face with the values you once ignored. Today, when I speak at universities and community events, I tell young men a truth I learned the hard way. Do not confuse preference with superiority. Attraction is natural, but arrogance is destructive. If you measure others solely by appearance, one day life may measure you the same way. Bodies change, status shifts, control is fragile. Character, however, compounds over time. I cannot walk, but I stand differently now. I stand in humility. I stand in awareness. I stand in gratitude for a lesson that cost me comfort but gave me clarity. If I could speak to my younger self, I would not warn him about the accident. I would warn him about pride, because the real paralysis I once suffered was not in my legs, it was in my perspective. And in losing what I thought made me valuable, I finally discovered what truly does.